Joining us now is Ann Coulter, the author of In Trump We Trust and many other New York Times bestsellers. And it only took about 10 minutes before a very chagrined Al Michaels had to go on and apologize for his untoward jest.
Yeah, it's really becoming clear that all of liberalism is a sexual predator protection racket.
Yeah, I don't think you ever, no, I don't know anyone ever had to apologize for making a joke about Donald Trump or Bob Packwood or Clarence Thomas. Do you recall anybody ever having to grovel?
No, though I would, that's like one of those highlights games. What doesn't belong in this list? Packwood was a sexual harasser, again proving my point that liberalism is a sexual predator protection racket. He was protected. I mean, he was not quite, Weinstein level, but pretty bad. He was groping women, sticking his hand down their blouses. Yeah, he was technically a Republican. This was in the old days. Your young listeners will have no idea what I'm talking about. Back when you could have liberal Republicans. Packwood was a ferocious defender of abortion. And so liberal women, feminists throughout Capitol Hill, working in the Washington media, had known, just like with Weinstein, for decades about Packwood's predations, but they never turned on him until the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the White House, and abortion was safe. And suddenly, now was the time to attack. Right. Whereas Clarence Thomas, they never did anything. Trump never did anything. I mean, we have that, remember that big 6-month investigation by the New York Times. It came out, I think, in early 2016. Major front-page report by that guy, Barbero or Barrasso or something, at the New York Times. He was the lead author on it, of Donald Trump's treatment of women.
Right, he offered a bikini.
The worst allegation
to somebody,
was that
right?
one of his high school classmates said that he seemed to like to be seen with beautiful women.
Well, he also
I was literally shaking, Howie.
And he also offered a bikini to some woman at Mar-a-Lago. He said
whom he ended up dating. Right? And she said there was nothing offensive about this. She came down in the bikini. He left the room, said, "Here, take your pick." She came down. A bunch of other beauty queens were there. She came down, and he said, "Oh, doesn't she look beautiful?" And they ended up dating.
Yeah. By the way, Ann, what's your theory on what really happened to Hillary Clinton?
You mean how she lost the election? I think it was
no,
Russians spending $100.
Ann, haven't you been following it today? She's fallen down again.
She did not.
Man,
you don't check the Drudge Report for 1 hour these days?
She claims that she was walking down the stairs in her high heels with a cup of hot coffee, which she has earlier claimed she never drinks coffee, and she was talking over her shoulder to someone behind her on the stairs, and she fell down and broke her toe. This was late at night, by the way.
I think you're probably right, with anyone else. Well, for one thing, why is she even telling us that? If this happened in her home, how would anyone even know?
She's in the UK. She's in the UK. The reason we know is because she missed a bunch of interviews this morning. She was booked into all these chat shows on London television and radio.
So for all we know, and perhaps quite likely, it's far more serious.
Well, I think she showed up she got to one of the shows that she was supposed to get to, and she was wearing one of those boots, a cast, So, but the question is, I mean, how believable? Do you ever wear high heels with a pantsuit?
Does that question need to be asked, Howie Carr?
It is. It's one of those things, and it's like being a prosecutor, right, or a lawyer. You never ask a question you don't know the answer to,
Yes.
Right?
Yes, color me suspicious.
Well, I just read a story on the air, and you probably haven't seen this one because it really hasn't made national ink, although it deserves national attention. The SJC here in Massachusetts, our Supreme Court, was basically shopping for a case so they could tell ICE and the Homeland Security that they couldn't take illegal aliens out of the jails here in Massachusetts. And they came up with a poster boy, an illegal alien criminal drug addict from Cambodia named Sharong Yung Lun. and they cut him loose, and everybody congratulated him and said, oh, this is a marvelous decision. And I was told, by the way, that by a judge who went to a conference, and they were all bragging months earlier that they'd found this great case that they were going to find to stick it to Trump and stick it and help out illegal aliens.
I have a feeling I know where this story is going.
I think you know where it's going. He robbed an elderly woman in a wheelchair and beat her to steal $2,500 to get drug money.
This is a fantastic story. You see, they cannot find. It's hard to figure out how to write this up because you're trying to prove a negative. But isn't it interesting that in the middle of this whole DACA hysteria, the dreamers, or the ingrates as I call them, they aren't being interviewed every night on MSNBC. Oh, no. Liberals realize that we can't find an attractive one. We can't find one that Americans will start weeping and saying, no, don't let that one go. No, they're all disasters, and even the ones who aren't beating elderly women while robbing them, they're not skilled. They're taking low-wage jobs away from Americans. The women are all 800 pounds. We're going to have an enormous diabetes cost on the taxpayers coming soon. And they're angry. I mean, if I broke some other country's laws and was getting free benefits from that country, I can't imagine any country would be stupid enough to allow me to do that. But suppose there were, I think I'd be grateful. I'd be thankful. I wouldn't be stamping my foot and say, and I want amnesty yesterday.
Well, how about the fact that this guy got a second chance, right? He got a second chance. He's like, and then earlier, Ann, and I mentioned this to the Newsmax audience earlier, this is like the second time in 6 months. A few months back, we had a guy, an African illegal who had robbed two banks in the city of Boston, robbed two banks violently in the city of Boston, and they said, we can't turn him over to the feds because he'll be deported, so can we shop for a judge? And they gave him 7 months on two violent bank robberies, and he gets out and immediately slashes the throats of two anesthesiologists in South Boston.
Wow!
You didn't know about that one either? Funny, this doesn't make MS.
No, and it just makes me even angrier about Republicans in Congress. They're worse than Elmer Fudd. Why don't they use these cases and have votes point by point on Trump's 70-point immigration plan before he will discuss Dreamers? Every single one of the 70 points has 80% approval in America. And that's why if you see anybody talking about the 70-point plan on immigration, you will never get any details. It's always just, oh, it's awful, it's terrible, it's dark, it's a poison pill, don't even look at it. Oh, we can't take this seriously.
Right.
Nancy Pelosi called it trash. Well, can we see what the proposals are? Always be suspicious when the media will not tell you what is in a proposal and are only giving you generalities.
Well, how about this Obamacare when he stopped the subsidies, and they all treat it like it's the end of the world, that all these people are going to be dying in the streets. A guy sent me a story from one of the local papers here in Boston on Sunday, and it took him to the 16th paragraph to mention that the payments that Trump had halted were not only unconstitutional and illegal, but had been ordered halted by a U.S. District Court judge, and the Obama administration had defied the court order to halt the unconstitutional illegal payments. They did. I bet most people who saw the headlines don't even know that to this day. It's 3 days later now.
Well, part of the reason they don't know that is the utter incompetence and laziness of our media, but I believe Trump was kind of bragging about it, and I wish he wouldn't. Not that I'm against this specific action, but I don't think any Republicans, Donald Trump or any Republican in Congress, should be fiddling around with Obamacare until they're going to replace the whole system with a nice free market system that works for every other product and service we buy in America. When they're ready to do that, then do it. But if they just do these little piecemeal changes, I mean, here it was at a judge's order, but I think Trump ought to be making that clear. To the extent they do anything to Obamacare, the disasters of Obamacare will get blamed on Republicans. So just leave it alone, let it be Obamacare, and come up with a Well, my idea is just to leave Obamacare there altogether and let the rest of us buy health insurance on the free market.
Well, but he's trying to do something. He's trying to force them back to the table, and this gets back to your description of the Republicans in Congress as feckless. I mean, he's trying to get their attention, isn't he?
Yes. I was thinking today, he had that meeting with Mitch McConnell, and I know we're all really down on Mitch McConnell. But what McConnell is good at, and very, very good at, is working the system, is getting things done, and just, two quick examples of it. It is to Senator McConnell's credit that he arranged for not one single Republican in the House or the Senate to vote for Obamacare. And consider that the Republican Party includes John McCain, Susan Collins, a bunch of similar stinkers over in the House. That was a very important message. They can't say it was bipartisan. And that was Mitch McConnell that did that. And then, of course, the other thing he did was negotiating the, I forget what it was called, they had a specific word for it. But if the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, couldn't agree on a budget deal, the sequester, that's what it is. What would happen was automatically a certain percentage would be cut from all federal programs. Howie Carr, in our lifetimes, and probably going back several decades before our lifetimes began, that is the first cut in federal spending that Congress has ever accomplished, and it was done through this clever sequester move.
How about the blue slips? He's cracking down. He's going to crack down on the blue slips, which idiots like Al Franken, who you wouldn't trust to fight a parking ticket for, even though he's not a lawyer. He's using it to hold up decent Republican conservative appointees to the appeals court, and they're just going to put an end to this nonsense. And that's Mitch McConnell. He ought to
do that. And the other thing he should do, as we may have discussed on your show, we may not have, is end the nonsense of the supermajority vote. The Constitution requires 2/3 of the Senate to vote for very specific things, to overrule a presidential veto, I think to sign treaties, to pass a constitutional amendment. There are only, 3, 4, 5 specific instances in the United States Constitution saying you need a 2/3 vote. So what on earth, just through some Senate rule, we're going to require 60 senators for everything?
Do you think he should
I think this is unconstitutional, and you should just make it 51 votes, which is
I agree. But Dan, one last question before we let you go. Do you think he should be going after Coulter like this, considering Corker's a lame duck? He's not going to be around anymore. He's done. He's dead politically. Why is he going after Coulter?
Well, I would prefer that Trump spend all his energy on building the wall. But having said that, no, I love him going after Coulter. I can't stand Coulter. He was one of the ones. There were only 14 Republicans to sign on to Marco Rubio's amnesty. Coulter was one of them. He's as bad as Rubio, McCain, Flake, and the rest of them, and I think it's fun to rub their noses in it.
Yeah, but it does take up it's wasted energy as far as I can see, given that he's not coming back. Anyway.
Well, if you were building the wall, then I would enjoy it.
And what is the title of your book that people should buy?
In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome.
All right, Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us, and I'll send you these stories. Okay, you want me to send you these stories?
Yes. Oh, and I have a Buffa one going up this week. Please look for it on Wednesday.
Okay, well, and I'll send you this one, the two stories: the anesthesiologist getting their throats cut, and then the old lady getting robbed and hit over the head in the wheelchair. Illegal aliens in the news, dreamers in the news. That's Ann Coulter. I'm Howie.